All right, and we are continuing our conversation with Ashley Morris. Now, Ashley, let's talk a little bit about you, the person, right? So, you went to Texas Tech, you got your bachelor's degree in geosciences with an atmospheric science concentration, which is interchangeable with meteorology. And then you went to a geoscientist master's degree, but in geography and natural hazards. So, two-part question: what got you interested in weather, and then what made you want to pivot, like not fully away, but a little bit away from weather when you were going for your master's?
Man, ever since I was 7, I remember just loving lightning and thunderstorms.
Mm-hmm.
I would go outside, and I know we're not supposed to go outside, but I would.
I won't
Just
tell anybody.
yeah, don't tell
Yeah, I won't.
anybody.
Okay.
I would go out and count the seconds. Every time
Ah,
I would see the lightning, count the seconds, and I had a lightning journal, so I would
really?
like draw it, put the miles.
Okay.
It was super nerdy,
You still
and
have that?
I wish I did. I don't. I don't.
Bummer. Could have made some money off of it or something, maybe.
I know.
Yeah.
But ever since then, like I always loved it. And like for me, I think I was always really passionate about like the public safety aspect of like keeping people safe from tornadoes and flooding and lightning. So I always wanted to go in the National Weather Service. That was always kind of the end goal for me until I kind of figured out what emergency management was while I was an undergrad, and it was kind of a option for me to kind of think about.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, like I saw it too with people that I went to school with for meteorology. They kind of take little pivots away from there. Maybe not fully out of it, but getting into a tangential field. And you're certainly doing that. And and I should say, you've been in a number of different places getting experience, from the Southern Plains out to Virginia, Baltimore, right? Prince George's County in Maryland too, right? And then you made your way, I'll say, back over to Texas, if that makes sense. When you look at, is there anything that's different between emergency management in the Mid-Atlantic as opposed to something that's out in Texas? Or is it all the same? Is it consistent?
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of like a lifelong learner. And so, like, I always look at opportunities like new ways to learn, either new communities or doing different aspects of emergency management with different threats. And so, like, I really wanted to pursue going out to the Mid Atlantic and learning because it's just so much more urban than where I was. And it's just different. I also really wanted to be closer to kind of FEMA and like just some of the DC agencies because I've never experienced that growing up in New Mexico. And so it is pretty different. Like obviously in really urban places, you have a lot of infrastructure, you have a lot of resources, and your communities just work different. A lot of people, a lot of different ways to solve problems. But in Texas too, I mean, we still have the same solutions, just different. And for me, I'm really big on like community-centric response and preparedness. And that's something that I've really, really enjoyed, especially in the hill country, of just seeing how my community all kind of relies on each other, especially in a more of a rural aspect where everybody does a little bit of everything and everybody helps everybody during floods, fires, or anything else. And so it's been interesting to kind of play both of those and learn how different the emergency management system can be depending on kind of just how your everyday society works.
So, with your meteorology background now, working in emergency management, and what I really wanted to talk to you about is like weather communications and what's good and what's bad. And like I see from my perspective that, and this is probably because a lot of municipalities, they might be, with one person part-time doing emergency management, or they're doing other hats, and they might, like, it's not like they're not sharing information, but it might be too general. Like they might pull from the National Weather Service and it might be for the whole state of New Jersey, but they're really talking about the one town, right? Like it's not local to them. So giving like, just focusing on the weather side of things, what do you like to do? Like what's good and what's bad?
It's really tough. I think it really starts with just being visible and available to your residents and being able to communicate it at all to them. So if you're visible, you have a social media presence, or maybe you're out in the community doing presentations, or you have a variety of different ways. People want to listen to that. They trust you because you're there. And then also too, if you can communicate exactly what you're saying, the local impacts, what's happening in Gillespie County, Fredericksburg, as opposed to South Central Texas or Texas in general. People are very interested in that. For me, I try to communicate it at a basic level. So I try to stay away from jargon just like everybody does. I also try to communicate what's relevant to them. I've got ranchers here. I've got different folks here where weather really impacts their everyday. Maybe they want to do prescribed burning. Maybe they want to be out cutting hay. We really try to focus on what that looks like for them and how we can really help give them the information they need. Lastly, I think it's just important too, we tend to think the worst of different weather. It's my job to be prepared for the worst case scenario, but I have to be careful messaging, because if I'm always messaging the worst case scenario for every single storm, then that's obviously going to burn them out and we're going to lose trust that way. So it's like a fine line and balance too, and be able to communicate a forecast to them to where they know about it and they can take action, but not overdo it every time to where they're just burned out by the 5th time that you have a storm system.
I think also too, just on top of that, and this is a weather communication things too, like you're in a county, right? So let's say you have a low probability, high impact event. How do you tell people like, hey, like, I'm not sure it's going to happen, but if it's going to happen, it's really going to happen? I mean, do you really just say it like that?
A little bit. I think for me, especially like with our flood risks here and other things, like I really try to give them exactly what the Weather Service and what we're thinking. Like, what is the certainty? Are we sure it's going to happen? A really good example of that is communicating those pockets of, 5-inch, 7-inch, 10-inch. When I'm talking to my fire chief or when I'm talking to public safety or even the public, I tell them like, hey, we know we have the moisture in the atmosphere to do this. We have no idea how to tell you where. So I can't tell you if it's going to be in Gillespie County with the 10-inch. I can't tell you where, but it's important to know that over the next 12 hours it is possible and that we need to just be prepared to take action in that event. And so we do the same thing on social media with our residents, letting them know this is the potential. But to be honest, I mean, there are things that we just cannot forecast at this time with flash flooding.
We'll talk a little bit more about flash flooding after the break here. In the meanwhile, enjoy this commercial about the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. Base flood elevation is the level floodwaters are expected to reach in a major storm. Building below it puts your home at risk. Building just 1 foot above it can significantly lower flood insurance costs and reduce flood damage. And don't forget to elevate mechanical equipment like air conditioners and generators. Small changes can make a big difference. This message is brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. Tidal flooding can affect roads, homes, and businesses across your area. Check your property's flood risk with our WEMA tool that we have with the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. You can also ask your insurance agent about flood coverage right after you're done listening to this episode. Most homeowners' policies don't cover flooding, and a policy may take 30 days to begin. So you don't want to wait till that flooding's happening to get that flood insurance. Never drive through floodwater, elevate valuables and utilities. And before building or making repairs, you want to call your construction management official's office in your town. This message is sponsored by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. All right, Ashley, so we were kind of talking off camera a little bit about, sometimes you got to spend money to make money, or in this case, to save a lot of money. And again, we find, there's a number of emergency managers out there who are trying their best, but they wear many different hats. Right? This isn't their only job. It might be their part-time job. It might be a part of their job they already have, right? I think you kind of agree with me there, right? Like a little, like investment, even if it takes 10 years to pay off, it will pay off at some point to have, a lot of this training and proper credentials and spending more time on it, dedicating more of a person's time on emergency management too.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do think that if you have a professional emergency manager, they have fully trained credentials. I also think, too, they have the bandwidth. Staff your emergency management offices, fund them. I think that the amount of work they can do with preparedness, so that's, resource tracking, that's inventory of supplies, that's pre-disaster contracts for big things that you're going to have to spend during the disaster. And then also preparing your financials. So having all your documents ready for reimbursement and the entire FEMA public assistance process. If you can do that when you have a disaster, I mean, you're going to be able to not only get your declaration pretty easy because you'll have your damage assessments, your data, all that paperwork ready to go. But you're also going to be in a good position during that, because you're going to know exactly what FEMA's going to need. You're going to jump through the hurdles, and you're going to be able to get there. And so I think, even if you have one disaster a decade, I think some of the benefits of being able to have multiple staff or a fully staffed person who's trained on that, you're going to be able to get a lot of money back on that. A big part too of reimbursement is like tracking things like donated items or volunteer hours. Those are free resources during disaster that technically can go to your 25% cost share and save you money when you're doing your FEMA package. So that's just one aspect. I would also like to say too, if you have bandwidth in your emergency management program at the local level and you're able to pursue mitigation grants from FEMA or even doing mitigation, I mean, we already know that every $1 you spend on mitigation returns you $8 now in response. And so I mean, especially nowadays where everywhere floods and everyone's got some kind of hazard or something, you're going to be able to save dollars somehow just having that investment.
Switching topics a little bit, just a solid question here. What do you think meteorologists should know about emergency managers that most don't? Because you see both sides.
Yeah, I think it's important to know what we do, how we do, and what our challenges are. So obviously, we've been working closely with meteorologists for a while now, and I think it's kind of clear that we do coordinate, we do share weather information, we do run our alert systems, we are helping our first responders with weather information. But I think really what I want meteorologists to know is, some of the challenges we have. And it kind of goes back to that local level, of staffing or capacity, or sometimes politics with disasters, or some of that stuff. I also want people to definitely know too, with weather information, sometimes it seems easy to make a decision. Hey, that's easy call, evacuate, or hey, why didn't we do this for this flash flood? I think there's a lot of different characteristics and things that go into all of that. And I think that giving meteorologists that viewpoint not only helps them give weather information, but helps better define, I guess, what our rules are, and then also, just some of the challenges we're going through with all that.
Got it. Yeah, in a state like Texas, so huge, obviously, multiple different weather. I'm thinking from weather perspective, multiple different weather threats. Flooding, of course, being one of them. We had, can't remember the day. You're going to remember it though, with pretty significant flooding in the hill country of Texas. What day was that? It was July
16th for my river.
16th for your river, right? And then also last year, what we had in the hill country as well on the 4th of July. So I feel like flooding's kind of top of mind, at least in the emergency management community. But let's just go back to this most recent event you had on July 16th on your river. So what is that, as an emergency manager, what does that look like for you? What are you doing, in the day or two leading up to the event? And what are you doing during the rain as well? That's bringing that flooding. Yeah,
so it's our job every single week to know what the weather is. We need to, know what's coming, be prepared. And so every Monday, Thursday, me personally, I check all the weather data, see what the patterns are. If I start to get concerned about a threat, we start doing what we call situation reports or briefings 3 days out. So we'll do a morning weather report to all of our city and county elected officials, to all of our department heads, to all of our first response chiefs, to all of everybody that needs to know about it, mostly so that our agencies can start preparing. If Public Works needs to go out and clear drains, they have the information to do that. If the fire department wants to start thinking about upstaffing for water rescue, they have an ability to do that. So we start doing just email reports first. If we start to ramp up the threat, typically I'll try to hold a weather conference briefing where I bring everybody on, we give a weather briefing. I talk a little bit about concerns, but then we do a round robin where every single agency head gets to talk about their concerns, their unmet needs, what they're going to be doing to be ready for the storm, as well as what resources they might need. So we started doing that a few days before that flood. And then if, again, it starts to escalate to where we really do think we're going to have coordination, we will go ahead and just open up our emergency operations center. We'll staff it, emergency management, public safety, or anybody that needs to be in that room. And then we'll monitor weather and then start doing emergency coordination out of that. It could be sitting there listening to dispatch. It could be watching the Weather Channel. It could be being on NWS chat, watching radar, and then obviously handling things that are coming in. If we're getting water rescue calls or whatever that is, we're all working together as a group in that emergency operations center, trying to solve problems, but together as opposed to just silos of agencies.
Yeah. And then final question for you here. The American Meteorological Society, our big weather professional society, we're both in it. You're smiling. I didn't say what I was going to ask you. But I was going to ask just generally about what you're doing within that community, to help further the cause of emergency management in the AMS. And that's something I feel like the AMS has been thinking about for a few years now.
Yeah, so I am on the Committee of Emergency Management. I've been on it, I think 6 years, but I'm chairing it now.
Nice.
I think this will be my last year.
They might rope you back in? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but I'll still be on it. It's just I think someone else probably has more of a bandwidth at this point to lead. But for me, it's kind of exactly what you asked me earlier. I just want to bridge meteorology and emergency management together. I think it's really important for us to save lives on the emergency management side to do that. And really honestly, we have a lot of room to grow on the emergency management side with just understanding weather. While we are challenged with different things on the field, I do think having a lack of weather training or having a lack of maybe accountability to making weather decisions, I think that does hurt us and it puts our public at risk. So I'm hoping that if we can continue to bridge the gap between meteorology and emergency management, we can have more emergency managers be more weather savvy. They can learn new things. And then two, that's going to translate to better decision making, better weather triggers, and then ultimately, less weather-related fatalities because they're exposed to that. On the weather side, I know it's going to help for sure when they better understand because they're giving EMC info. So anything to help with the IDSS stuff on the weather service side or anything else. And so that's really the goal. Our committee is working on our second disaster and emergency management symposium at AMS this year. And so we're excited to hopefully get some more emergency managers to come speak and bridge that gap a little bit.
Great. All right. Well, we're looking forward to that. I know we've had a couple of talks about emergency management and public communicators of weather and where we should go with our certifications and things like that. But let's before we wrap up, you can follow Ashley at Miss Ashes 92. She's in Gillespie County, Texas, and we are going to get into the one thing we can't stop talking about: tidal flooding or otherwise. We didn't have too much tidal flooding on this talk. Would you like to start?
Yeah, I think for me, obviously, with two big flood events in Central Texas, we've always historically been known as Flash Flood Alley, but it's even more apparent now. And so in terms of staying on topic with flooding, I think something I've really learned is the massive gap we have in the disaster response and recovery system for private roadways and driveways. That's been a big issue for the Hill Country, even last flood, but this flood especially, and it's so hard because you can't really insure private roads. There's not a lot of relief for that, and it really is a recovery aspect that's super important in the rural communities. And so I'm interested to know, if there's a way to solve that. I've asked some colleagues with, Hurricane Helene and some other things, what they've done, and they've had to rely on individual assistance through FEMA when they qualify, but it's if you don't qualify for that, there's not really much solution. So that's definitely been on my mind, and I would say, having to walk through that challenge and just endlessly looking for support for residents has really opened my mind or my eyes to that problem.
That's great. That's definitely more serious than what mine was going to be. So that's fine. You just got me thinking about Lubbock, Texas. You went to Texas Tech. I've always been interested in going to West Texas. I want to do a West Texas road trip. Where am I going?
It's all flat, but you definitely got to go to a Texas Tech football game if you go in the fall.
Yep. Okay. Where else am I going? Am I going to Midland? Am I going to Amarillo? Is it Dumas? What are the spots? Where are the spots I'm going to? I got a week in West Texas.
I'm not really a big fan of Amarillo or Midland. I would just say Lubbock. Just stay in Lubbock.
Just stay in Lubbock. Isn't there a place in Marfa that has a Louis Vuitton store or something?
Yes.
Is it a Louis Vuitton store?
Or is it Prada?
Prada, that's it. It's Prada. Okay, so maybe there and then Lubbock, and that's it.
Pretty much.
Okay. All right. I'll keep that in mind. I'll never. I've only been as far west in Texas as Austin. Austin.
Really?
I mean, I've been further west, but I've never been further west in Texas than that.
Okay.
But I want to go. I want to do a West Texas road trip. That is on my bucket list.
You've got to. And then, too, you got to swing through Fredericksburg wine country. You know, Central Texas is the 3rd best wine region in the United States, according to the recent poll.
What are the first 2? I'm guessing Napa Valley.
Probably Napa. I don't know the second one. Probably maybe Washington.
Maybe New Jersey.
You guys have wine up there?
Yeah, we got plenty of wine. Cape May County is the capital of wine in New Jersey. We got vineyards. Yeah, we got vineyards all over the place.
That's awesome.
Thanks. We try. You try too with all the wine. You might need it after all the emergency management. Anyway, Ashley, thanks for hopping on. We really appreciate it. Any final words before we wrap up?
No, well, I guess I do have a final word. I was going to say no and then go on a tangent. I will just say, so August is National Emergency Management Awareness Month. This is the 2nd year that we're doing this. And so we are encouraging everyone to get to know your local emergency manager. So that's your township, your county, or your city. Get to know their program, what their staffing is. Also get to know what they're doing. You know, are they doing community events you can be involved in? Are they working on the mitigation to stop your flooding like maybe you want? All of those things, because the more engaged communities are into those services, the stronger they are. So I just encourage everybody to take some time during this awareness month to do that.
Great. Okay. That's very helpful. We appreciate that. And we appreciate you for coming on TIDAL Flooding Talk. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I am Joe Martucci. On behalf of Palma and Dan, who I believe will be with us next time. It is great that you're here with us. New episodes come out every Tuesday. Make sure to like, download, and subscribe. We are pretty much everywhere at this point for where TIDAL Flooding Talk goes out. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition for making this all possible. And thanks again for Ashley for coming on. We'll talk with you soon, everybody.